The story began in a way that seemed ordinary at first. Life on Earth was moving at its usual pace. Cities were bustling, technology was advancing, and people were just living their lives, unaware that the universe was quietly watching them. Humanity had always looked up at the stars with curiosity. For centuries, humans wondered if there was life beyond their planet, and for centuries, they had no answer. But one day, that curiosity turned into something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. The first sign that something unusual was happening came in the form of a message. It wasn't like a normal message from another country or a satellite alert. This was something completely different, something that came from far beyond the solar system. Scientists around the world scrambled to decode it. The message was carefully written, polite on the surface, almost diplomatic, but underneath there was a warning. It was an invitation of sorts, but one that carried a hint of threat. The words were precise and calculated, as if the sender knew more than humans did, as if they had been observing humanity for a long time. At first, people didn't panic. Most of the world's leaders treated it as a curiosity. Alien contact, they said, something for scientists to study. But those in the know felt something deeper, something unsettling. Humanity had always imagined that if we ever met extraterrestrial life, it would be intelligent, maybe peaceful, maybe even helpful. No one had expected that the first real contact could carry a warning, an implied threat against all of humanity. The council that sent the message was known as the Galactic Council. To humans, this was a concept almost impossible to fully comprehend. The council was made up of dozens of species, each with their own civilizations, technologies, and histories. They had conquered countless worlds, tamed countless populations, and formed an organization to maintain control across the galaxy. To them, humans were just another young species, a species to watch, maybe to guide, maybe to contain. They assumed humans were not ready to face the wider universe, but the Council was wrong. They underestimated humanity in the way that every powerful force in history had sometimes underestimated humans. They assumed that humans were fragile, limited by their biology, their planet, and their resources. They assumed humans would submit when faced with power far beyond anything they had ever known. They were confident, overconfident. On Earth, scientists, engineers, and even ordinary people began noticing subtle changes. Satellites detected strange movements in orbit. Communications were being intercepted, though it wasn't clear if it was intentional. Governments quietly formed teams to study the message and plan a response. What could they do? How could a species that had never traveled beyond their solar system respond to an entire council of the galaxy? The answer wasn't obvious. Then, slowly, humans began to act in ways that no alien could have predicted. At first, it wasn't military. It wasn't about weapons. It was about understanding, learning, and preparing. Humanity had one advantage: adaptability. Where the Council had relied on rules, order, and predictable strategies, humans were unpredictable. They experimented. They improvised. They adapted. Every problem was met with countless solutions, each one different, each one surprising. In Nev laboratories around the world, new technologies were being developed, some inspired by alien theories, and some purely human innovation. Engineers were working on propulsion systems that could react faster than traditional models. Biologists were studying ways to enhance resilience and survival. Even ordinary citizens contributed in small ways, from inventing communication systems to building drones that could operate in unusual environments. Humans worked together, not as subjects under a ruler, but as a species fighting for its own survival. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, was watching. Their initial reports came back with confusion. The humans adapt too quickly, one report said. Our reconnaissance missions return with no clear results. Their behavior is unpredictable. For the first time in the Council's history, a species made them hesitate. No matter how many worlds they had conquered or controlled, no one had ever faced such an unpredictable enemy. And the humans weren't even aware yet that they were being judged, or that they were already considered a threat. It was a delicate moment. On Earth, there were debates. Some leaders argued for diplomacy, trying to keep humanity safe through communication and compromise. Others argued that the warning was clear: prepare for defense. The debate was intense, but one thing was certain: humans would not simply submit. They had faced challenges before, in smaller ways, and each time they had found a way to overcome. They had survived plagues, wars, natural disasters, and countless obstacles. Humanity had never been peaceful by chance. It had been strong by necessity. As humans began to prepare, they discovered a new side of themselves. Communities united in ways never seen before. Scientists, engineers, and thinkers from different countries shared knowledge openly, setting aside old rivalries. Ordinary people began volunteering, creating systems for rapid response, building shelters, and supporting research in every way possible. This was not just preparation for war. This was preparation for survival, for proving that humanity could not be dismissed. The Galactic Council, observing all of this, began to grow impatient. They sent emissaries, attempting to intimidate and control. But humans did not respond with fear. Instead, they responded with resilience. Small, calculated moves, carefully hidden defenses, and unexpected countermeasures began to frustrate the Council. Every time the Council thought they had humans figured out, humans found a new way to surprise them. It was like watching an endless game of chess where one side did not follow the rules. What the Council did not realize was that humans had something no other species in the galaxy had: experience in surviving impossible odds. From ancient times, humans had lived through environmental extremes, from frozen tundras to scorching deserts. They had fought wars against each other for survival and emerged stronger, more innovative. Humans were not the strongest physically, nor the most technologically advanced initially, but they were creative, adaptable, and most importantly, united when it mattered. In the background, ordinary life continued. Children went to school. Families went to work, and people still laughed, celebrated, and loved. But behind this normalcy, humanity was learning, growing, and preparing. The stars were no longer distant points of light. They were the stage for a challenge that would test every skill, every instinct, and every ounce of human ingenuity. And then came the first clear indication that the Galactic Council had made a serious mistake. Small probes sent to study Earth encountered systems they could not penetrate, defenses they could not predict. Plans carefully designed to intimidate humans failed in ways that were almost comical. Humans adapted, repaired, and improved faster than the Council expected. What was meant to be a warning was turning into a revelation. Humans were far more capable than anyone had assumed. By the end of this first phase, humanity had changed without even realizing it. They were no longer just a planet of people trying to live their lives. They had become a species that could withstand, respond to, and ultimately outsmart forces far beyond their own planet. And the Council, for all their power, began to whisper doubts among themselves. Perhaps humanity was not a species to be controlled after all. Perhaps they were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of sheer strength, but because of something far more powerful: their will to survive and the unpredictable nature of their ingenuity. It was at this moment that the real story began. Humans were still ordinary people, still living their lives, still struggling with their day-to-day problems. But as the stars above continued to watch, the first chapter of humanity's confrontation with the galaxy's most powerful forces came to a close. The message from the stars had been clear, and humanity's response had been quiet, calculated, and terrifyingly effective. And this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council believed that victory was guaranteed. They had faced countless civilizations before, each one more advanced than the last. Entire worlds had fallen to their fleets and strategies, often without much resistance. To them, humans were just another species, a young, unpredictable, but ultimately weak species confined to a single planet. They assumed that sending advanced reconnaissance fleets and carefully coordinated messages would be enough to establish control over Earth. At first, the Council's approach seemed straightforward. Alien emissaries arrived near Earth, there. Ships enormous and intimidating, hovering above the planet like silent predators. Each vessel was covered in advanced technology, weapon systems capable of striking the entire surface in moments, and scanning devices able to analyze the planet in ways humans had never imagined. Their strategy was simple: show power, demand submission, and ensure obedience. But humans did not react in the way the Council expected. Instead of panic, fear, or submission, there was curiosity and determination. Scientists around the world worked day and night to study the alien vessels, trying to understand how they worked, what their weaknesses were, and how to communicate or defend themselves if needed. Engineers proposed new strategies and devices, blending human creativity with the little they could observe about alien technology. Ordinary citizens, meanwhile, began to prepare in subtle ways, building shelters, organizing communication networks, and sharing knowledge. Humanity's response was slow to escalate, but it was deliberate and unpredictable. The Council quickly realized that their usual tactics were ineffective. Their reconnaissance missions, meant to intimidate and gather intelligence, returned baffling results. Alien pilots reported that humans were adapting too quickly, often in ways that seemed random or irrational, but which consistently produced effective results. A small human team could disable a probe using tools that the Council had. Considered primitive, entire fleets failed to anticipate the humans' unconventional tactics, and every miscalculation only grew the aliens' frustration. The Council's leaders began to argue among themselves. Some believed they had underestimated humans entirely, and suggested that they proceed more cautiously. Others insisted that Earth must be subdued, insisting that no species could possibly match the Council's combined power. But as the reports came in, the reality became undeniable. Humans were dangerous in ways the Council had never seen before. On Earth, ordinary people were becoming heroes in quiet ways. In one coastal city, engineers modified local communication. Satellites to detect alien signals, intercepting and deciphering their codes faster than anyone thought possible. In remote deserts, teams of biologists and mechanics collaborated to create hidden shelters and supply caches, ensuring survival in case of direct conflict. Communities across the globe began sharing knowledge openly, no longer bound by borders or politics. The humans were united in purpose, even if they did not fully understand the scale of the threat above them. The Council had assumed humans would rely on brute strength or fear to respond. Instead, humans relied on ingenuity. A small team developed simple but highly effective strategies to confuse alien sensors. Others learned to predict alien flight patterns, setting traps without firing a single weapon. Even their failures became lessons, teaching the Council that humans could adapt and improve at an incredible pace. Every encounter left the aliens more uncertain, more wary, and more frightened of the species they had once considered weak. One day, a group of human scientists discovered something remarkable. By observing the alien technology and applying basic principles of physics and logic, they found a way to create interference in the Council's communication systems. What was supposed to be a one-way flow of information from the aliens to humans became a complicated dance where humans could anticipate and manipulate outcomes. Suddenly, Humans were not just defending themselves. They were shaping the battlefield in ways no alien had anticipated. Reports from alien reconnaissance teams grew frantic. Ships that had once moved with precision began to falter, colliding, or retreating unexpectedly. Commanders could not understand how a species they considered primitive could exploit their advanced technology so effectively. In their history, no species had ever adapted to such complex threats without formal training, advanced education, or direct instruction. Humans, with their imperfect tools and messy methods, were thriving where logic alone had failed. The Council tried intimidation, sending larger fleets, deploying automated strikes, and issuing harsher warnings. Yet every attempt was met with ingenuity, resourcefulness, and human perseverance. When one attack disabled a city's power grid, humans quickly created alternative systems to maintain communications, share resources, and continue their preparations. When surveillance drones were launched to monitor human activity, they were intercepted, repurposed, or redirected in ways the Council could not anticipate. Each success, no matter how small, emboldened humans and confused the aliens. What truly unsettled the Council was the human spirit. Unlike many species they had faced, humans were not afraid to take risks. They did not rely solely on their technology or physical strength. Instead, they used creativity, collaboration, and courage in ways that no algorithm or battle plan could predict. Children, families, and communities were indirectly involved, contributing to a culture of adaptation and problem-solving. Every day, humans proved that they could turn even ordinary situations into opportunities for growth and survival. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread about this unusual species. Even among Council members who had never interacted with Earth directly, the stories of human resilience and unpredictability were impossible to ignore. They had underestimated humans, assuming weakness, and that assumption was beginning to feel like a dangerous mistake. Reports described humans surviving impossible odds, outsmarting advanced technology, and finding solutions to problems that the Council had never encountered. The term deadly began to surface, not in terms of violence, but in terms of capability, adaptability, and unpredictability. Meanwhile, humans continued to live their lives. Schools, hospitals, and businesses operated as normal, even as the threat above grew. Scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens balanced everyday life with preparation, embodying a resilience that was uniquely human. Their ability to remain calm under pressure, to find joy amidst danger, and to support each other in small but meaningful ways became their greatest strength. By the end of this phase, the Galactic Council began to understand that they were facing something extraordinary. Humans were not simply another species to be controlled. They were a species that could survive anything, adapt to any situation, and respond in ways no one could predict. The Council's confidence had turned into caution, their certainty into doubt. For the first time, the most powerful beings in the galaxy were forced to reconsider their approach to Earth. And humanity, largely unaware of just how close they had come to catastrophe, continued to prepare. Every day they improved, adapted, and grew stronger. Every day they learned more about themselves and their place in the universe. They were no longer just humans living on a small blue planet. They were a species capable of surviving the impossible, of confronting the unknown, and of proving that ingenuity, courage, and unity were more powerful than any weapon. The Galactic Council had assumed that they were in control. They had assumed that humans would submit. They had assumed that they could intimidate, manipulate, and conquer. But all of those assumptions were wrong. Humans had shown, in quiet, deliberate ways, that their strength lay not in force alone, but in their adaptability, intelligence, and determination to survive against all odds. This was the turning point. The Council's first encounter with humanity had not gone as planned. Instead of submission, they found resilience. Instead of fear, they found ingenuity. Instead of weakness, they found a species that could challenge even the most advanced. Civilizations in the galaxy dot and the humans themselves, they were just beginning to understand the scale of what they were facing. They did not yet see themselves as warriors of the galaxy, but as people striving to survive and protect their world. They had no idea that the very qualities that made them human, their curiosity, their creativity, and their willingness to fight for survival, would soon earn them a reputation that would ripple across the stars. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, was learning an uncomfortable truth. Humans were unpredictable, relentless, and extraordinarily dangerous in their own way. Every plan, every fleet, every message sent in confidence was met with a response the Council could not predict. Humanity was proving that they were not a species to underestimate. They were learning to adapt, to survive, and to thrive in ways that no one, not even the most advanced civilizations, could have imagined. And this was only the beginning. By this point, humanity had shifted from mere preparation to action. The warnings from the Galactic Council had made one thing very clear. Earth would not be left alone, and if humans did not act, the consequences could be catastrophic. But humans did not panic. Instead, they began to move with focus, creativity, and patience. Every step was calculated, yet every step was unpredictable, something the Council had consistently failed to account for. The first moves were subtle. Humans didn't attack fleets or fire weapons in the way alien commanders expected. Instead, they focused on intelligence, communication, and coordination. Teams of scientists and engineers worked together to understand alien technology, looking for patterns, weaknesses, and blind spots. Ordinary citizens contributed too, using whatever knowledge and resources they had. In cities, towns, and remote villages, people organized networks of observation, communication, and support. Even in small ways, every human became part of a system that was bigger than themselves, a system designed to protect Earth in ways the Council could never imagine. One of the first successes came in space. Small satellites and unmanned probes, designed by humans using limited but clever technology, began to disrupt alien surveillance. Signals were jammed, monitoring systems were tricked, and alien reconnaissance fleets reported ghost signals and strange interference they could not explain. The Council's intelligence officers were baffled. Their advanced technology, which had easily subdued dozens of civilizations, was failing to predict, detect, or counter human improvisation. Each small victory gave humans more confidence, and the Council more doubt. Humans also demonstrated an incredible ability to adapt their environment to their advantage. Cities were not just centers of population, they became hubs of strategy. Underground tunnels, abandoned facilities, and even natural caves were repurposed into communication centers, supply depots, and safe zones. Communities that had once been isolated learned to share resources and skills. Engineers taught civilians to repair and improvise equipment. Scientists shared knowledge with anyone willing to learn. The Council had assumed humans would act individually, relying on fear or survival instincts. Instead, humans were cooperating, sharing, and building something far stronger: unity. Meanwhile, the Council's fleets attempted to assert control through intimidation. Massive ships loomed over major cities, and automated drones conducted low-level attacks meant to frighten humans into submission. But humans reacted differently than expected. Instead of fleeing or panicking, they studied every attack, analyzed patterns, and countered in ways that were not immediately violent, but were devastatingly effective. Communication arrays rerouted signals, creating false targets and fake readings. Drones were hacked, intercepted, or tricked into crashing into each other. What was supposed to be a show of power turned into a demonstration of human adaptability and intelligence. As humans grew bolder, they began to innovate in ways that surprised even themselves. They designed new technologies from scratch, using alien principles they could understand combined with human creativity. Simple ideas became powerful tools. A network of small drones could outmaneuver alien detection systems. Energy fields, created with improvised devices, could confuse sensors. Even basic physics, when applied creatively, allowed humans to protect key areas without direct confrontation. It was not brute force that made humans formidable. It was ingenuity, timing, and understanding how to exploit the unknown. The Council's leaders began to panic. They had faced enemies that were stronger, faster, or more numerous, yet none had ever responded with the kind of clever, unpredictable tactics humans used. They tried to communicate again, issuing stronger threats and offering incentives to surrender. But humans were not interested in submission. They were learning, adapting, and growing stronger every day. Each attempt at diplomacy was met with careful planning, subtle interference, and strategic countermeasures. The Council realized that humans did not need to fight with brute force to be effective. Their intelligence and adaptability were already proving deadly. On the ground, ordinary humans were becoming heroes in ways that no one could have predicted. People who had never held a weapon, built a drone, or worked with technology were now integral to the effort. Civilians repurposed old factories to produce tools. Engineers converted everyday devices into defensive systems. And scientists shared discoveries with communities around the world. Even schools, libraries, and universities became hubs of rapid learning and problem solving. The humans were not just surviving, they were evolving into a species capable of confronting threats far beyond their original expectations. One particularly remarkable moment occurred when humans discovered a pattern in the Council's attacks. By observing the timing, formation, and behavior of alien ships, they realized that the Council relied heavily on predictable algorithms. Humans, naturally unpredictable, could exploit these patterns. They set traps, diverted fleets, and created confusion on a scale that stunned the aliens. A ship that had intended to intimidate a coastal city found itself caught in an invisible web of human strategy, forced to retreat in confusion. Reports of such failures spread quickly across the Council, causing panic and uncertainty at the highest levels. The humans were not motivated by conquest or revenge. They were motivated by survival and protection. Families, neighbors, and communities were united in a way that no alien species could understand. Their strength came not from weapons alone, but from the human spirit, their ability to work together, to think differently, and to adapt under pressure. Every small action, from redirecting a drone to sharing critical intelligence, contributed to a larger picture that the Council could not predict or control. Even in space, humans began to take initiative. Small fleets of unmanned vehicles, guided by humans on Earth, moved with precision, intelligence, and creativity. They disrupted alien operations, gathered information, and forced the Council to reconsider its approach. The aliens, who had once assumed that Earth would be a simple target, were now struggling to understand a species that could use ingenuity as effectively as firepower. Every engagement reinforced one undeniable truth. Humans were clever, resilient, and unstoppable when united. The Council's own soldiers began to whisper in fear. Reports circulated that humans could survive extreme conditions, outthink automated systems, and anticipate moves in ways that seemed almost impossible. They had underestimated a species that was messy, chaotic, and emotional, yet capable of extraordinary precision when it mattered. The term dangerous began to be used more often, not in terms of aggression, but in terms of capability and unpredictability. The Council had assumed weakness. They were now discovering a strength they could not control. Humans, however, remained focused on the essentials. They did not celebrate prematurely, nor did they underestimate the threat. Every success was followed by careful analysis, learning, and preparation for the next challenge. They understood that survival required more than courage. It required intelligence, adaptability, and unity. Children were taught to think critically, adults to share knowledge, and communities to work together. In doing so, humans were not just resisting. They were transforming into a species capable of challenging the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. By the end of this phase, the Galactic Council had learned a difficult lesson. Humans were not predictable. Humans were not fragile. Humans were not a species that could be intimidated by threats, technology, or force alone. They were clever, adaptable, and relentless in ways that no alien species had ever seen. What the Council had assumed would be a simple challenge had become a dangerous puzzle, a puzzle that could not be solved by power, intimidation, or control. And humanity, for its part, was just beginning to understand its own potential. Ordinary people, working together with courage, intelligence, and creativity, had already turned the tide in ways no one could have imagined. They had proven that strength is not measured by weapons or numbers, but by the ability to survive, adapt, and act when it matters most. The Council had assumed humans would fear them. They had assumed humans would submit. But instead, humans had proven something far more important: that ingenuity, resilience, and unity could defeat assumptions, expectations, and even the most powerful forces in the galaxy. And the battle was far from over. By now, the Galactic Council was beginning to realize a frightening truth. Humans were not simply surviving. They were thriving in ways that no alien species had ever experienced. The Council had expected fear, hesitation, and submission. Instead, they encountered a species that adapted to every challenge with intelligence, creativity, and determination. Every failed attempt to intimidate humans became a lesson for the humans themselves, making them even stronger. Humans had proven that they could take the impossible and turn it into an advantage. When alien surveillance systems scanned cities, humans hid, rerouted, or disrupted the signals without even being noticed at first. They used nature itself, forests, mountains, deserts, and oceans, as tools of strategy, turning the environment into a shield and a weapon. In one case, small teams used natural weather patterns to mask communications and movements, confusing alien scouts and causing them to report false readings. The Council could not understand how a species that seemed so fragile could manipulate its surroundings with such skill. The Council's commanders grew anxious. Reports from the field described humans surviving situations that should have been impossible. Ships that had been designed to suppress entire civilizations were thwarted by clever, improvised tactics. Entire fleets were delayed or forced to retreat because humans had exploited weaknesses the aliens had never considered. Even the most sophisticated alien intelligence networks were failing to predict human actions. Humans' unpredictability was becoming legendary among the Council's ranks. The aliens had assumed that a species with no interstellar travel experience would act predictably, relying on fear or brute strength to survive. Instead, humans were creative, adaptive, and relentless. They could turn failure into strategy, danger into opportunity, and chaos into advantage. Every unexpected human action sent shockwaves through the Council's leadership. On Earth, life continued, but it was different now. People were no longer passive observers of their planet or the universe. They had become active participants in a struggle that was bigger than anything they had imagined. Scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens worked together seamlessly. Knowledge was shared openly, and collaboration became second nature. People who had never been involved in defense or technology suddenly became key contributors, offering ideas, tools, and skills that helped humanity's efforts. The humans' ability to combine their creativity with practical problem-solving became their greatest weapon. For example, when alien forces attempted to isolate critical cities, humans developed communication networks that could survive total power failures, rerouting messages and instructions in seconds. When alien surveillance attempted to predict human movements, humans created decoy signals, false patterns, and hidden paths. Every tactic was simple, yet devastatingly effective, because it relied on thinking differently, a skill the Council had never fully anticipated. The Council began to understand that humans were more than just clever, they were deadly. But not in the way the Council had originally imagined. Humans were not warriors in the traditional sense. They did not rely on superior firepower or raw strength. Instead, their deadliness came from ingenuity, adaptability, and the ability to work together under pressure. They could anticipate challenges, improvise solutions, and use any tool or environment at their disposal. This combination of skills, born from centuries of survival on a single, sometimes harsh planet, made them unlike any species the Council had encountered. Stories of human resilience began spreading across the galaxy. Even distant observers began to take note of Earth's unexpected capabilities. Reports described humans surviving extreme conditions, using rudimentary tools to outmaneuver advanced technology, and coordinating with astonishing precision despite their planet's apparent limitations. The Council's commanders whispered among themselves, realizing that their assumptions about Earth had been catastrophically wrong. The humans themselves remained remarkably calm. They did not seek to frighten or attack for glory. They were simply acting to survive and protect their world. Ordinary people continued their lives alongside extraordinary efforts. Children went to school, workers went to factories, and families celebrated small moments of joy. Yet every action, no matter how ordinary it seemed, contributed to a larger human effort. Communities were more connected than ever, sharing resources, knowledge, and ideas to ensure the survival of the species. Even the Council's most advanced ships could not anticipate human moves. Small groups on Earth, using a combination of creativity and logic, were able to reroute drones, jam signals, and manipulate the battlefield in ways the aliens could not predict. The humans' ability to improvise, combined with their willingness to take risks, created a level of unpredictability that rendered many alien strategies useless. Every failure the Council experienced only reinforced the humans' reputation as an extraordinary species. For the first time, the Galactic Council faced the reality that humans were not a species to be controlled or dismissed. They had underestimated a civilization that by outward appearance seemed ordinary but was capable of extraordinary feats. Reports described humans surviving attacks, outsmarting technology, and finding solutions that no alien mind could predict. The Council's confidence had turned into fear, and that fear only grew with each new human success. The humans' ingenuity was not limited to technology. Their ability to cooperate, learn, and innovate collectively was unmatched. Communities around the world organized in ways that allowed information and resources to flow seamlessly. Local knowledge was combined with scientific expertise, and improvisation became a standard practice. This unity, combined with creativity and courage, made humans a force that could not be easily defeated. Even alien commanders who had previously conquered multiple civilizations were shocked. They had faced countless species, many stronger and more numerous than humans. But no species had ever been able to take a defensive situation and turn it into an unpredictable, constantly evolving advantage. Humans could endure, adapt, and strike in ways that were both clever and highly effective. Their capacity to innovate under pressure, to see opportunities where others saw obstacles, and to remain united in the face of danger was terrifying too. The Council docked by the end of this phase. the Galactic Council's perception of humans had changed dramatically. The species they had once dismissed as primitive was now recognized as extraordinarily dangerous, not because humans sought war or conquest, but because they were capable of survival, adaptation, and strategy at a level that no alien had expected. Humans had turned the impossible into a proving ground, showing the galaxy that even a seemingly fragile species could achieve incredible feats. And the humans themselves? They had only begun to understand their own power. Their unity, creativity, and resilience had already reshaped the way the Council viewed them. Humans were no longer just inhabitants of Earth. They were a species that had proven, through action and ingenuity, that they were capable of surviving, thriving, and even challenging the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. The Council, for the first time in its history, feared what humans might do next. They had assumed superiority, but they were now forced to confront an inconvenient truth. Humans were unpredictable, relentless, and deadly in their own way. Every encounter had proven that assumptions could be fatal, and that even the most advanced technology could be outwitted by a species willing to think differently and fight with everything they had, and the story was far from over. Humanity was just beginning to reveal the full extent of its strength, ingenuity, and courage. By now, humans were no longer simply defending their planet. They were beginning to take the initiative. They had studied the Galactic Council, learned its strategies, and discovered patterns in its operations. What had started as survival had turned into calculated, clever counteraction. Humans were beginning to strike back not with brute force alone, but with intelligence, ingenuity, and teamwork. The first major demonstration of this new approach came in the skies above Earth. Alien fleets, confident in their technology and experience, approached key areas, expecting to intimidate and overwhelm humans. They were met with something entirely unexpected. Humans had set up networks of satellites, drones, and signal interference devices that could track the alien ships, predict movements, and even mislead them into false targets. Ships that had never encountered failure before now found themselves in confusion, navigating traps designed with simple yet effective logic. On the ground, humans had created systems that allowed them to respond quickly to any alien maneuver. Communities were organized with emergency plans, alternative communication routes, and rapid response teams. Engineers and scientists had built hidden shelters, energy sources, and automated tools to repair damage. The alien assumption that humans could be pressured by fear alone was proving disastrously wrong. Every move humans made seemed unpredictable, resourceful, and effective. The Council began to realize that their most advanced weapons were not the ultimate solution. Even automated attack drones, designed to neutralize entire cities, could be intercepted, redirected, or neutralized by human ingenuity. Ordinary people, engineers, students, farmers, and workers found ways to use everyday materials to block, mislead, or even destroy alien systems. Their creativity was staggering, and it was this creativity, more than their weapons, that was turning the tide. For the first time, humans were actively shaping the battlefield. They were not waiting for attacks. They were creating opportunities. Small unmanned fleets moved in coordination with human command centers, striking at supply lines, misdirecting alien ships, and gathering intelligence. Humans exploited every weakness, no matter how small, turning it into a strategic advantage. Each success was a lesson that made them even better prepared for the next challenge. The Council's leaders were growing desperate. Their fleets were delayed, their strategies failed, and their predictions were no longer reliable. They had faced countless species, each defeated in turn, yet none had adapted in the way humans did. What had been a test of intimidation had become a demonstration of human cleverness and resilience. Alien commanders began whispering about the impossible species, humans who could survive anything and strike back in ways no one expected. On Earth, ordinary people became heroes in quiet but significant ways. Teachers converted classrooms into command centers for data collection. Engineers adapted old factories to produce new tools and devices for defense. Civilians learned how to use drones, communications equipment, and even simple physics to counter alien movements. Each small effort contributed to a global network of human resistance, one that was flexible, intelligent, and united. One particularly important breakthrough came when humans discovered a flaw in the alien communication system. By carefully observing signals, timing, and routing patterns, humans developed a way to intercept messages and predict movements. It was not about destruction. It was about information, anticipation, and control. Humans could now act before the Council could react, turning defensive strategies into offensive maneuvers. The Council's reaction was telling. Ships that had once operated with precision now hesitated. Fleets that had been unstoppable faced setbacks they could not explain. Every encounter reinforced one undeniable fact: humans were capable of learning, adapting, and improving faster than the Council could respond. The very qualities that made humans unpredictable, their creativity, collaboration, and courage, were turning them into a species the Council had underestimated at its peril. Meanwhile, humans remained focused and humble. They did not celebrate recklessly, nor did they underestimate the threat. Every victory was followed by careful analysis, further preparation, and sharing of knowledge. Ordinary life continued alongside extraordinary efforts. Children went to school, workers went to factories, and families found moments of normalcy. Yet every action, no matter how small, contributed to the larger goal of survival and effective resistance. Humans also learned to exploit the Council's own assumptions. The aliens expected humans to act predictably, to respond to threats in obvious ways. Humans did the opposite. They created decoys, false patterns, and controlled chaos to confuse the Council. Entire fleets were redirected without the aliens realizing it. They fell into traps that required no advanced technology, just clever thinking and observation. The human ability to improvise, experiment, and coordinate had become their most dangerous weapon. Even alien leaders who had previously conquered countless civilizations were shocked. They had faced species with far greater numbers, superior technology, and organized strategies. Yet none had matched human adaptability. Humans were not the strongest, nor the most numerous, but they were the most unpredictable, the most creative, and the most determined. Their ingenuity allowed them to turn disadvantage into advantage, threat into opportunity, and chaos into strategy. By this stage, the humans' reputation was growing. Reports from the Council's scouts, pilots, and commanders described humans surviving impossible odds, outsmarting technology, and striking back in unexpected ways. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread about this species on a small blue planet, ordinary in appearance, but extraordinary in action. Humans were proving that survival, creativity, and unity could surpass brute strength and advanced weaponry. Themselves were still learning. Each encounter, each unexpected success, taught them more about the Council, their strategies, and their technology. They were becoming faster, smarter, and more coordinated. Communities shared knowledge across countries and continents. Scientists and engineers collaborated with ordinary citizens. Everyone contributed, whether through direct action or support, in creating a planet-wide system of resilience and response. The Council, meanwhile, faced an uncomfortable truth. Humans were not a species to be intimidated, controlled, or dismissed. Their unpredictability, ingenuity, and courage made them deadly, not in a violent sense, but in the sense that they could adapt, survive, and strike back in ways that defied expectation. Every strategy the Council tried was countered by human creativity. And every failure only highlighted the limitations of even the most advanced alien technology. By the end of this phase, the Galactic Council had to accept what they had long ignored. Humans were extraordinary. They were capable of surviving and responding to threats that no other species could. They were not warriors by nature, but their intelligence, adaptability, and unity had made them a force that could challenge even the most advanced civilizations. The Council had underestimated humans at their own peril, and humans themselves? They were only beginning to see the full extent of what they could accomplish. Their efforts had already changed the way the galaxy viewed them, proving that survival, creativity, and collaboration could overcome assumptions, expectations, and even overwhelming power. Humanity was no longer just a species on Earth. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species capable of reshaping the galaxy's perception of what it meant to be strong. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain. Humans had taken the first major steps in showing the universe that they were not to be underestimated. They were clever, adaptable, and relentless. And they had only just begun. After months of preparation, adaptation, and subtle counterattacks, humanity had reached a turning point. The Galactic Council, once confident and unyielding, was now cautious and hesitant. The species they had dismissed as weak and primitive had proven themselves to be unpredictable, resourceful, and relentless. Humanity had survived impossible odds, adapted to threats no one had thought they could endure, and even turned the tables on the Council's most advanced forces. Humans had learned that survival was about more than defense. It was about understanding your opponent, anticipating challenges, and using creativity in ways that no one could predict. On Earth, scientists and engineers had developed systems to monitor alien movements, create safe zones, and redirect attacks before they reached human populations. Communities were connected like never before, sharing knowledge, resources, and strategies across borders, oceans, and continents. Ordinary citizens were no longer passive observers. They had become participants in a global effort that combined intelligence, courage, and collaboration. The Council, on the other hand, was forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew. Their assumptions had been shattered. Humans were not fragile, they were not predictable, and they were not intimidated by superior technology. Every plan they executed, every weapon they deployed, was met with countermeasures that were clever, subtle, and effective. Even the most advanced alien fleets were delayed, confused, or repelled because humans found ways to exploit weaknesses, improvise solutions, and adapt to changing circumstances. It was not only the humans' intelligence that made them formidable, it was their spirit. Communities came together to protect their world. People who had never been involved in defense or technology suddenly became key contributors. Engineers adapted everyday tools into systems that could counter advanced fleets. Civilians provided critical intelligence or repaired equipment under pressure. Scientists discovered patterns in the Council's operations that allowed humans to anticipate attacks and create strategies that turned disadvantage into advantage. The humans' ingenuity and resilience were unmatched. The Council began to acknowledge the truth. Humanity was deadly in a way they had never experienced. It was not because humans sought conquest, domination, or revenge, but because humans refused to be controlled, refused to be intimidated, and refused to surrender. Their creativity, adaptability, and unity made them capable of surviving and overcoming challenges that would have destroyed countless other civilizations. Reports of human ingenuity and unexpected victories began to circulate among alien leaders, creating fear and respect. One of the most significant moments came when humans successfully countered a coordinated alien attack on multiple continents. Using a combination of communication networks, autonomous drones, and carefully timed strategies, humans managed to protect major cities, reroute alien fleets, and prevent mass destruction. It was a clear demonstration that they could think, coordinate, and act faster than any system the Council had deployed. The aliens had anticipated submission. They had not anticipated intelligence, courage, and improvisation at this scale. Humans continued to innovate. They discovered weaknesses in alien technology, learned to exploit patterns in attacks, and developed new methods for communication and defense. Even in the midst of chaos, ordinary people remained resourceful. Schools, workplaces, and neighborhoods became hubs of innovation, where ideas were shared and improved rapidly. Every contribution, no matter how small, became part of a larger system that strengthened humanity's position. The Council's confidence eroded with each human success. Commanders began to doubt their strategies. Fleets hesitated before advancing, and some units retreated after encountering unexpected human resistance. The humans' unpredictability, combined with their ability to learn and adapt, made them the deadliest species the Council had ever faced, not because of raw power, but because of their ingenuity and resilience. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread about Earth. Stories circulated about a species that could survive anything, adapt to any challenge, and outthink civilizations that were supposedly centuries ahead. Humans were no longer seen as primitive. They were recognized as extraordinary, dangerous, and unstoppable in ways that could not be measured by technology alone. The Council, which had once assumed superiority, had learned a lesson in humility. Underestimate humans at your own risk. By now, humanity had proven that they could endure, adapt, and thrive in situations that seemed impossible. Ordinary people had become heroes through acts of courage, creativity, and collaboration. Engineers and scientists had turned small inventions into life-saving tools. Communities had learned to share knowledge, resources, and support across vast distances. The humans' ability to work together, even under pressure, became their ultimate strength. The Council finally took notice. In a rare act of acknowledgement, they issued communications that recognized human achievements. They admitted that they had underestimated the species, that their assumptions had been wrong, and that humans were capable of things they had never imagined. It was a monumental moment. Humanity had earned respect not through intimidation or power, but through resilience, intelligence, and courage. Humans themselves continued to focus on what mattered most: survival, growth, and protection of their world. They did not celebrate recklessly, nor did they underestimate the challenges ahead. Every encounter with the Council taught them more about their own capabilities, their strengths, and their potential. They had learned that unity, adaptability, and ingenuity were more powerful than any weapon, more valuable than any fleet, and more lasting than any technology. The lessons humanity had learned extended beyond technology and strategy. Humans had discovered the power of collaboration, the importance of courage, and the value of creative thinking. They had shown that even ordinary people, working together, could achieve extraordinary outcomes. Communities, families, scientists, engineers, and everyday citizens had all contributed to this global effort, demonstrating the strength of the human spirit. By the end of this phase, the Galactic Council had no choice but to respect humanity. The species they had once dismissed as primitive had proven themselves capable of surviving, adapting, and thriving in the face of overwhelming odds. Humans were clever, resourceful, and united. They had turned weakness into strength, danger into opportunity, and chaos into strategy. The Council realized that they were no longer dealing with a simple civilization. They were dealing with the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. And humanity itself? They had only just begun to understand their own potential. They had proven that survival, ingenuity, and collaboration could overcome any obstacle. They had demonstrated that strength is not measured by weapons or numbers alone, but by the ability to think, adapt, and act together in the face of adversity. Earth was no longer just a planet. They were a species that could challenge the galaxy, inspire awe, and earn respect. The story ended with humans standing stronger than ever, ready for whatever the universe could throw at them. They had proven that their ingenuity, resilience, and courage made them the deadliest species in existence, not because they sought conflict, but because they refused to be defeated. And in doing so, humanity had shown the galaxy a lesson that would never be forgotten. Underestimate humans at your own peril.